Okay, we will be starting our webinar. We have some people logging in already. And we are here today during National Drive Electric Week to talk to you about electric vehicles with Sarah Sweet from Tacoma Power, who is our EV guru. We've done several of these with Sarah. I'm Janda, I'm the coordinator at the Enviro House. And we have some new information in this one from previous ones that Sarah's added. So we'll get into that in a minute. I'm going to just wait a few seconds for see if we can get a few more people in here. And while we are getting started, do you want to do your first poll now, or do you want to wait until after your?
Let's wait till a few more people filter in.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say I have a first poll, but we seem to get the same answers all the time. So I wasn't going to put it in today, but if you had some way that you heard about this webinar other than Facebook or from the Enviro News listserv or the Enviro House website, if you want to drop that into the chat, you can do that. I'm guessing that most of you have probably been doing webinars before, but if you haven't, there is a bar at the bottom of your screen. There's Q&A where you can ask a question in the Q&A, and there is also a chat feature. So if you use the chat, which I encourage because that way it all is registered and it stays with the content more readily. Make your chat or the Q&A to show all panelists and to everybody so that the people signed in can see what you're asking and can also get the answers. So Sarah, while we are waiting for folks to come in, why don't you tell a little bit about yourself and then we'll get started.
Sure, thank you, Janda. So my name is Sarah Sweet. I do work for Tacoma Power, as Janda mentioned. I also have a background in environmental sciences. I received my master's degree from the Evergreen State College. So this is a really big passion for me. Carbon reduction in general is a big passion for me. So EVs fit right in there. And I'll say at the end of the presentation, I'll have a slide with resources. My email's on there. So if you have any questions, feel free to email me or give me a call. I'm accessible to answer any questions about this. And besides that, I just want to welcome you all to National Drive Electric Week. In the past, we've done ride and drive events. This is now our second virtual event, but to be in the spirit of a ride and drive, I do have a picture from our last ride and drive event behind me that was at LeMay Car Museum. So we will have those in the future again, I'm sure, so keep an eye out for those. Gives you a chance to drive electric vehicles out around and experience them firsthand if you haven't had a chance to yet. That is the best way to experience them.
Okay, so let me add upcoming workshops, webinars, if you are interested. We will be doing the next one on the 9th of October on heat pumps. And we'll be doing that with Jordan Whiteley, who formerly was Tacoma Power and is now with Mercurios. So he will be presenting on heat pumps and heating and cooling and water heaters. And then later in October on the 23rd, we'll be doing pruning landscape trees. The next week we'll be pruning fruit trees and ending with mason bees on November 6th. So you can register for those at the Enviro House website, cityofTacoma.org/Enviro House. And I will pop that in the chat when we get started. We have several people in now. We still have some that have registered that haven't logged in yet, but let's go ahead and get started, Sarah, so we can end on time.
All right. So we'll start with a poll right out of the gate. I'd just like to know a little bit more about everyone who's here today. So please let me know where you are in your EV journey. And I think Janda will be able to have a poll pop up for you in a minute with a multiple choice.
Okay.
There we go. And I'll try to gear what I talk about a little bit more, a little bit less, depending on our audience here, and answer your questions. And I'll add too, I like this to be interactive, so feel free to pop questions into the chat while I'm presenting. And Janda, if you just wanna, you can stop me where I am, let me know when we have a question. I'm happy to answer those. And if I'm about to cover it, I'll let you know.
I will do that, and you will see me when I pop up and my face is on the screen. That means that we have some chats.
Perfect.
Okay.
Right.
Most everybody that's in here has answered, so I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and share it with you.
All right, let's see. So we've got one person that has no experience. So welcome. Thank you for taking the plunge to learn more about EVs. There is someone who's driven one. Most people are interested in buying. So that's fantastic. This should answer a lot of your questions before you buy. And seriously considered, concerned about mileage. I'll talk about that. About 4 people on that. Oh, currently own. Okay. We always get some current EV owners. So for you current EV owners, if you want to share your experiences, feel free to jump in and share your experience. I'm also an EV owner, so I share my personal experiences all the time as well. It's always nice to get that firsthand experience. All right.
Okay, and we have one that said other, and I think that's probably the one that's answered in the chat, that is someone who owns an electric motorcycle.
Oh, cool. All right. So we'll start at the beginning. EVs are not a new concept, as it turns out. There's a lot of people who are hesitant to adopt because they feel like it's a new technology and they want to wait and see how it goes. Well, they've been around for over 100 years. So these are just some samples, a couple of samples of ads from back then, from early electric vehicles. And what I love about, you can't really read the print, but this Baker Electric ad, one of the things they say is eliminates chain and chain troubles. And I think that's so funny because that's sort of one of the benefits we talk about with EVs now, because we talk about how there's less moving parts and they're quiet. So even back then, same thing. Back then it was a chain, no chains in cars anymore, but same thing, less moving parts. And I love this picture here of this woman charging her electric vehicle over 100 years ago. It's fantastic. And Henry Ford knew this. He said he believed that the electric automobile would be the family carriage of the future in 1914. Sometimes I think about how where we could have been today if electric vehicles had become the main car at the time, because early on they were more prevalent than gas vehicles. Gas vehicles where people were like, they're loud and smelly, like I don't like that. I mean, you're going from a horse to a loud, smelly vehicle, not a great sell at the time. But then at the end of the day, it's just, I mean, our electricity grid wasn't very well developed back then. So that's really what stopped it. But I just think how amazing it would have been, where we could have been today if we had kept developing from there. So now, why drive an EV? You may have already heard some of this, or maybe you haven't. So what brings most people in or gets most people interested initially is there's no tailpipe emissions. There's no fossil fuels used with fully electric vehicles. So that usually gets a lot of people initially interested, but they're also less expensive to fuel and maintain. And that's kind of a misunderstood concept with a lot of people. I hear a lot of people think that they are more expensive. So I'll go into that a little bit more. But then just on the fun side, they're really quick. You get instant torque, whereas with a gas motor or a gas engine, it needs to spin up. But with an electric motor, it's right there, it's ready to go. So it's like snapping a rubber band back is the analogy I've heard before. And it really, I just have a little Leaf. I don't have a sports EV or anything like that. And it really moves. And it's just so quiet. Funny enough, I was actually in my car on a work call and I had to be unmuted so I could answer, but wasn't looking at the screen, of course, was driving safely. And they said, I can't hear anything. Are you in your EV? And I said, yeah, I was a little worried about the road noise. And they said, no, I can't hear a thing. So That was pretty fun. That was good feedback to hear. I've never taken a work call from my EV, and no one could even tell I was driving. So fossil fuel transportation, by comparison, a lot of this isn't news to us. They do generate greenhouse gas emissions that exacerbate climate change. They're inefficient and expensive to operate. Something that you may not be aware of is that most of the energy from your gasoline is lost in heat energy when you're driving your gas car. So only a fraction of it, I think it's something around 30% of the energy from gasoline goes to moving the wheels of the vehicle. The rest of it is lost in heat energy. And this makes sense when you think about all the cooling systems you have in a gas car, and how if one of those cooling systems goes out, if you've ever been driving a car when the radiator goes out, you're in trouble. And they're very expensive because the gasoline's expensive, the maintenance is expensive, there's a lot of moving parts that can break, so there's just a lot of expenses. Then there is runoff that pollutes roadways and then ends up in waterways. And here in the Puget Sound, that's really important to us, right? We live by this big, beautiful estuary, and we don't want to pollute it. And the health of our salmon is really important, and the other fish and wildlife we have in our water. So we really want to protect them. So that's huge. And the fuel source of fossil and gasoline and oil does present national security issues because we import a lot of that. And, you know, a lot of times we're at the mercy of foreign prices. And we all know about gas prices jumping up and down because of different things that are going on around the world and, you know, politics and economics. So carbon emissions, back to what interests a lot of people initially. This is the city of Tacoma's most recent greenhouse gas emission inventory. And you can see 44% is from transportation. That's huge. So that is really, electrifying our transportation is the #1 thing we can really do to reduce our carbon emissions in this city. And this kind of dives in a little bit deeper. This is all Pierce County, however, not just Tacoma. And you can see 37% is just on-road vehicles specifically. So that is so that's not counting ships or planes or anything like that. This is just vehicles that are on the roadways. There are different electric vehicle types. So I'm going really fast. Let me pause for a minute and make sure we don't have any questions. And do we have any questions, Dan? I'll check. All right. I'll keep going. You stop me if you see anything. So there are battery electric vehicles. This is fully electric, no gas, not a hybrid. Just plugs in and it charges up the battery, and that's all the energy used to move the car. There are also plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. So these have a battery and can fully run on electric, but they also have use gasoline and have a gas engine and all that. I'll say the downside to this is now you have all the moving parts of a gas car. So while you get kind of that extra backup for range if you need it, now you have to pay for all the regular maintenance and any issues that come up with the gas side of it. So that is a downside. Interestingly enough, these are sort of starting to phase out of the market. A lot more people are making the plunge directly to full electric. Then there are extended range EVs. These are, funny enough, this is a technology that they've used on ships for a long time. So it essentially has the equivalent of a gas generator that recharges the battery. So you can use the battery for most everything, but then you've got that backup to recharge the battery if you need it. Then there are full hybrid vehicles. This is like the Prius that we're most familiar with, that have been around for a long time now. This doesn't plug in at all, but it does use a battery to help kind of just make it way more efficient. So the gas in the vehicle and the running of the engine recharges the battery, and they work together to make the car more efficient. But there's no plugging in there. So there's no way to run it fully on electric. So for the purposes of today's presentation, we're just going to talk about the fully battery electric vehicles. But first, a quick word on hydrogen. Hydrogen vehicles are electric vehicles. They just run on hydrogen. And hydrogen can be made, they can make green hydrogen with just electricity and water. And the hydrogen itself is on board the car, and it is turned into electricity through the different processes in the car. So it's the same thing. It's still an electric car. It's still completely clean. There's only a few passenger vehicles on the market right now. There's the Toyota Mirai, the Hyundai Nexo, and the Honda Clarity, which actually was just discontinued recently. Next time I do this presentation, I'll probably have to take this one off, but I left it on here because, oops, still a few out there. From what I understand, they're letting people finish out their leases and then they're gonna completely take them off. So there's not much out there on the market, passenger vehicles. But so this is just an overview of how it works. So you can see, I kind of mentioned, you've got the fuel filler. So it fills up like a gas car, but it's hydrogen instead of gasoline. And it has tanks that have to be highly pressurized. And this runs through the fuel cell stack, and then that turns into electricity to run that motor. So fully electric, and the emissions are just water. So they have a tailpipe with like just a little water that dribbles out. It's kind of like, it reminds me of a condensate drain from an air conditioner. So the benefits of hydrogen vehicles, some things to think about. Like I said, it only emits water vapor and warm air as exhaust. It can travel 300 to 400 miles a tank, although this is becoming less of a benefit over electric vehicles because there are electric vehicles now that have this same range. So this isn't as much of a selling point these days. They do fill up quickly, just like a gas station. So it kind of mimics what we're already used to. You don't have to wait for it to charge. And manufacturers right now do often give away fuel for free for a set amount of time. A lot of times electric vehicles do this too. I actually got charging for free from public stations for 2 years. But you can't fill up your car with hydrogen from home. You can charge your electric vehicle at home. Some challenges with hydrogen, and this is really why they're not up here yet, is the fueling infrastructure just isn't here. So you can see these little blue dots on this map. There's a bunch in California because the state of California did invest heavily in hydrogen early on. There's nothing in Oregon, and there's nothing in Washington. I think technically maybe, now I think these ones are actually technically Canada, but they're just over the border. So it's not, like I said, you can't refill at home. You have to go to a station. So that's the only thing. You can't fuel it up here. And they're pretty darn expensive. Right now, they're the equivalent of about 27 cents a mile, where compared to an electric vehicle, it only costs about 3 cents a mile to fuel. So an electric vehicle is far more cost effective. Now, I'm not saying that hydrogen vehicles will never be a thing. I think that we're going to need a combined solution with both battery electric and hydrogen. Some areas where I think hydrogen will be really great is like heavy equipment, like trucking and things where you really can't afford to have a long charge time, that you need to fuel quickly, and you need that longer range, and you have room for more fuel. So it'll be interesting to see what the future holds and how this plays out. So I think I see a few things in the Q&A. I'm gonna peek at that real quick. Let's see. Okay, why would automaker build an EV with solar panel roof to harness energy of the sun? Yes, so Tesla actually does do some solar panels, but the amount of space on an electric vehicle, and so I'll back up. Solar panels are not incredibly energy dense, which means as a generation resource, is what you call them, they don't offer a lot of energy for the amount of space they take up. On top of that, when you put it on a car, you have to use a thin film that's flexible. Those tend to also not produce as much as the rigid panels. So combined with the small footprint of the car itself, the roof of the car, wherever you could put solar panels, and the fact that it's the thin film, you really don't produce that much. So I think Prius actually did this a long time ago. I was looking at it. Now Tesla's doing it. And the solar panels that they have put on their cars, I don't think Prius does it anymore. I remember they did 8 years ago, but Tesla it really just runs like, say you want to have the car climate controlled on a hot day so you don't get into a hot car. So it's like, it's just enough energy to run the air conditioning. So it's not really enough to run the battery, but it can help with certain accessories. So yeah, it's totally a thing. They do that sometimes. What's your thought on Rolls-Royce EV? They may be rolling out in the future. I don't know what the price point is. And actually, I did not know Rolls-Royce was rolling out an EV. That is super exciting. I recently just saw Cadillac has a commercial coming out with their new EV, a whole bunch, which is really fun. But I didn't know Rolls-Royce. The price point, I'm guessing it's high, just a guess. So I will have to look that up. That is part of why I love doing these workshops, because people teach me things and tell me things I don't know. Funny thing is, when I first started doing these workshops, I don't know, 4 years ago, maybe, I was able to tell people about every model that was out there. But now there's so many coming out, and I'll touch on this later, that I can't keep up. It's like knowing what is every model of gas vehicle on the market. It's getting tough to keep up. So that is exciting. I didn't know about the Rolls-Royce. And yes, I will absolutely share my slides for the PowerPoint. I sent them to Janda so she can send them out at the end. All right. So cost. So there tends to be a perception that electric vehicles are very expensive, and I'm just here to let you know they don't have to be. So this is just a sample of a few used electric vehicles. I will say this is, I pulled these pre-pandemic, and I understand with cars across the board right now, it's tough to get cars right now. There's a bit of a shortage, all kinds of reasons for that economically. There's been a chip shortage, there's been supply chain issues. So, you know, this is not necessarily representative of COVID times, but you can get used electric vehicles for under $10,000 these days. So I had an intern that worked for me that had an electric vehicle, and, you know, we do pay our interns fairly, but they're not making a ton of money. They're not rich by any stretch, and she loved her little EV, and it totally worked for her. So they're out there. Absolutely, you can do your research. I will talk to you a little bit about batteries later about that, because there's something to think about when you're buying used. There's also a Washington state sales tax exemption. This is for both new and used EVs. So this is just a breakdown. Right now, we are in the up to $20,000 of the sale or lease price. So definitely check that out. There is a list of qualifying vehicles, so you want to check. I have links for this at the end of my presentation, but that is an option. Unfortunately, I bought my EV in the window when we lost our sales tax exemption and before we got it back. So I didn't get this deal. So you can find a very affordable used EV and get a tax exemption on it. There is also a federal tax credit for new electric vehicles. So if you go new, you could get that sales tax exemption plus the federal tax credit, which is fantastic. Again, this one, check and see which models are eligible, and then it does ramp down depending on how many sales they've made in the US, because it's tiered. So you'll want to kind of see before you rely on that what you could be getting back or what you'd be credited. So gas versus electric cost. We have this really fun tool on our website, and if Janda is able to, she may share a link for this. And so you can play with this calculator yourself, but you start by just putting in the number of miles you drive in a day. And this is actually pretty close to what I used to drive before the pandemic, before work from home. You put in your current gas vehicle that you drive now, and then you put in the EV you're interested in, and it will give you a side-by-side comparison. So you can see here that per month, this breaks down per month. So if you drove this Subaru Outback here, which I had a Subaru Outback for my EV, you would pay about $40 a month if you only drove 10 miles a day. But then in a Chevy Bolt, you only pay $6 in electricity costs a month if you drove 10 miles a day. And this is about right. I think I drive more on the weekends for sure. But I think between my weekend driving and my regular work commute, it was coming out to about $10 a month for me, which is huge. I went from about 40, this is pretty good, pretty accurate. I went from about $40 a month to $10, which is nice. Another way to think about it is it only costs about 3 cents a mile to fuel your electric vehicle based on Tacoma Power's rates. So keep that in mind. This is based on our rates. So if you're a Tacoma Power customer and charging at home, so with 8 cents a kilowatt hour, based on the efficiency, kilowatts per mile with an EV ends up being about 3 cents. So however many miles you drive, you just multiply it by 3 cents, and you get a rough estimate of how much it will cost you. There's also this really fun tool for those of you that are not in our service territory. There's this fun tool called Egallon. This is just a different way to think about it. So it doesn't go per mile. It translates it into per gallon, because we're used to thinking of miles per gallon and per gallon of gas, buying it that way. So you can change this drop down to Washington, and it'll give you an average cost for Washington state. And it will tell you, so right here, based on the average cost of gas in Washington state and the average cost of electricity, it comes out to, it's as if you're paying 89 cents a gallon, which is pretty nice if you're going with electric. Right. So maintenance costs. This is also much lower. I alluded to this earlier. And the reason it's lower is because there's just less stuff to break. There's no oil, there's no serpentine belt, there's no spark plugs, there's no transmission. I've had a car blow a transmission. It was an awful experience. I was very young and did not have the resources to pay for that thing to get fixed. I had to beg them to fix it for me and let me pay them on a per month basis. They were so nice. So I mean, yeah, none of that, no gas tank, no exhaust, just less stuff. My EV I've had since I got it in 2018. All I've had to do is put air in the tires. I am not joking. That is it. That's all I've had to do. And I keep saying I need to change the windshield wipers, so I should probably do that. The other thing the factory does recommend is flushing out your brake lines. But I will say EVs also have something called regenerative braking. So when they restore some of the energy from when you're braking or going down a hill and use it to recharge the car. So you end up putting less wear on your brake pads, which is pretty cool. So that's even a thing you'd think that maybe it would be the same, but you even save that. So so the electric versus gas maintenance costs. Consumer Reports recently did a study. I'm so happy they did this to kind of look at this. What does this really look like? So in the first 50,000 miles, you can see the gas only vehicles are black. The plug-in hybrids are dark green, and the all electric are light greens. You can see that the all electric is little over a third of the maintenance cost of a gas vehicle. And I really wonder what they're counting for me, because like I said, all I put is air in the tires. So that was like 50 cents at a gas station for the air machine. So I'm not sure what, they didn't specify exactly, if I recall, exactly what they were counting for maintenance, but that may be like all the factory recommended maintenance. But I haven't had to do anything for mine. So then the first 100K, you can see again, it's less than half. And then lifetime 200,000, it's still about half. So pretty good cost, but I'll say a lot of EV drivers you talk to, they'll say it's even less than this in our experience. Cost of ownership. So just kind of summary, new EVs can sometimes be more expensive than gas vehicles, though I'm probably going to have to change the slide in the next year or so because they are starting to come down to cost parity, which means they will be the same cost as gas vehicles. We're so close, and that's mostly because the cost of batteries keeps going down every year. So once we get there, once the cost of batteries comes down even further, we'll be at cost parity, and then it will be a much better deal economically to get an electric vehicle. But like I said, you can find deals out there. There's used EVs, there's sales tax exemption, there's a tax break. So you can definitely get the cost down. And, then there's no maintenance or oil changes. I think one of the thing that really pushed me to sell my gas car or trade in my gas car and get electric is, I'm always really good about maintenance for my cars because I've had cars break down on me and it's a bad experience. So I'm very, very strict about my maintenance so that doesn't happen. And I had just my regular, mileage maintenance on my car at the time, my gas car. And it was only a 4 or 5 year old car. And it was like an $800 maintenance trip. And there's nothing wrong with it, nothing at all. It was in perfect condition. Just had to do my normal maintenance. And so I started doing the math and realizing that, even with the higher upfront cost, I would be saving money with an EV with all this maintenance and fuel savings. So I urge you to look at our calculator and kind of do your own cost benefit analysis and see what it comes out to, because it definitely worked out for me. And whoops. So, and yeah, I mentioned the fuel cost being far less. This is average $20 a month, but that depends on how much you drive, of course. I live in town where the same town I work in. So I was only spending about $10 a month, but mostly charging at home. So that's 8 cents a kilowatt hour rate. And while there's no gas tax, this is one thing to keep in mind. And actually I just got my registration, so I'm going to have to pay this. There's no gas tax, but they got to get their taxes some way. So it comes out of your yearly registration. So there's a tax in there so it comes out to about an additional $225 a year in your registration, though I'm pretty sure I'm still paying less than I was with gas taxes. I'll say that the challenge with this, oh, Janda,
wait a minute, I keep popping in and out here. When you're finished with that thought, we have a question about battery life and cost.
Oh yeah, I will actually get to battery life shortly. So I'll check in after I do that slide. And if I haven't answered your question, let me know.
Okay.
So yeah, I'll say one thing about this, the registration, the annual registration is the beauty of a gas, I hate to say this, the beauty of a gas tax is that the more you drive, the more you pay, right? Which is fair because you're using the roads more and that goes to the roads. So it makes sense, it's logical. But the annual cost, the annual just once a year fee for everybody on your registration, it doesn't take that into account. So, me living in town, I was paying the same as coworkers that were commuting really far in their EV. So I know that's something that the state, people are looking at and trying to figure out how to make that more fair, but that's what it is for right now. So be aware. All right, charging. So you may have heard this concept of level 1, 2, and 3 charging, or DCFC. So what does that mean? Level 1 uses a standard outlet. And so that's just a regular plug in your house or in your garage. And it can take a long time, depending on the size of your battery. It could take 24 hours or more. That was about my car. I think because I have about 150-mile range battery, and it took, I think, maybe about 16 hours to fully charge it. But I used just a regular outlet for the first year and a half, I think, or maybe even 2 years for my EV, and it worked fine. But I don't have a long commute. That's the other thing to keep in mind. But it worked fine for me. Just took a little bit of thought, and it's plugged in at night when it's parked anyways. So it didn't really cause any inconvenience because I'm not sitting there waiting for it to charge. Level 2, this is public charging, or you could do this at home. This is the same amount of electricity that your dryer uses or your water heater uses. You may even already have this outlet in your house. It's the same as a dryer outlet or like a welder, if any of you are welders. It's the same plug. But yeah, and a lot of the chargers out there, they just plug in. You don't have to get them hardwired. You can if you want to, but my car came with one that was just a plug. So one thing I will mention on this, I didn't pay attention to. I lived in an older apartment that did happen to have a garage, fortunately. And I was like, oh, I'll just use the dryer plug. I don't need to dry my clothes at the exact same time I'm charging. What I failed to take into account was that it was an old building. And so the plug was the old 3-prong plug. And it was not the 4-prong, they call it the NEMA 1450, that the newer 240-volt appliances plug into. So I get home and my my car plug is this 4-prong thing, and I'm staring at my 3-prong plug and go, well, I'm a renter, so I guess I'm just going to use my regular level 1 outlet, 120 volt outlet for a while. And it worked. But when I got my house more recently, I had them install a plug, and it's been super easy, super convenient now to just be able to charge at home. It's amazing at level 2. Level 3, oh, and I'll mention real quick, little plug here, pardon the pun. No, I'm not sorry for that pun. Tacoma Power does currently have an EV charging incentive for level 2 charging at home. So I will send out, sorry, Janda, I didn't give you a link about that ahead of time. It's very new. I will send out that link. I'll send that link to Janda after this so that she can send it out with the other information she'll send to you, in case any of you are interested in that. Level 3 charging, or DCFC as it's more commonly called. This is commercial grade power. You can't get this service at home. This is massive. They are 480 volt chargers, and they will charge up your battery, 80% of your battery in 30 minutes. So heavy duty, really great for long distance drives. So you can just take a little 30-minute break and get 80% of your battery charged up. One thing I will say, and I'll go into this later when I talk about batteries, is that it does put a little wear and tear on your battery. So it's not something you want to rely on every day, because it does create heat, and heat does wear on batteries. So charging ports. This is what different charging ports look like. And I always apologize for the name of these because this is their name. J1772 is the North American standard plug. This is the level 2 plug. So any level 2 charger you go to in the US is, and I believe Canada as well, because it's North America, is going to have that. So every EV you get here is going to have that, and every level 2 charging station will have that. So you don't have to worry about that. This is level 2. This is one that's going to take 6 to 8 hours maybe to fully charge. So this is better if you're going to be somewhere for a while, or if you're charging at home. J772 double, or CCS as I usually hear it called. It looks similar, but then has these 2 extra bits at the bottom. This is for fast charging. So different models of vehicles use this. I know the BMW i3 is one of them. And then there's the CHAdeMO. So Chevy uses this. My car uses this. Or no, wait, maybe I'm mixing them up. No. Oh yeah, I mixed them up. I'm glad I looked at that closer. CCS, this J1772 double. Chevy and BMW use this. Kia, Nissan, Mitsubishi, and Toyota use CHAdeMO currently. And then Tesla is special. They have their own plug for both level 1 and 2. Though I understand they give you a adapter for this to use J772, and you can get CHAdeMO adapters from what I understand. I don't know if they do an adapter for CCS, but this is what Tesla owners have told me. So yeah, Tesla's special. So if you have a non-Tesla vehicle, you cannot charge at a Tesla supercharger or at a Tesla station. So be aware of that. So where can you charge? There's lots of charging. This is just a snapshot of what is here kind of in the Tacoma area. I think this is off our website. And then this is an example of an app. There's a load of apps out there that you can get. I think one of these examples is PlugShare. There's other out there. So wherever you are, you can look up these websites and they'll show you charging an area. And the network is expanding. So the West Coast Electric Highway is an effort to expand charging all down our main highway corridors. They've done a pretty good job of filling in all down north and south of I-5, and they go all the way down from the border of Canada to Mexico. So all the way down I-5. And I believe their initial goal was a charger every 50 miles, so that literally every EV on the market could make it. And I think they've achieved that goal, and now they're filling in some gaps, and now they're moving east. So quick poll. How far do you drive in a typical car trip? All right, let's see, it is up.
I'm not seeing that on my end, so if it's not up there, let me know.
Yep, it's up, and I see people answering. That's weird that you can't see it. Just weird. Technology gremlins. All right. So while we're doing that, I see a couple questions. Average battery life of a new EV, and financially, does it make sense to buy a new battery? Okay, so I'm getting ahead of myself, but it's okay. Well, we're answering the poll. So right now, the batteries that are currently being replaced, so this is older EVs that have been out for a while, they've lasted about 8 to 10 years. So it's 8 to 10-year-old EVs just now needing a battery change. However, the chemistry in the batteries themselves, in the lithium ion batteries, are getting better and better. So new EV batteries, they say, will last longer because it's better technology and they're getting better at like cooling systems and all kinds of stuff. But they don't know how long. So new EVs coming out on the market probably will last long. The battery will last longer than 8 to 10 years. As far as cost for the battery, it really ranges. It depends on the company. So you'll kind of have to see. There's third-party companies out there that are doing battery swaps as well. You'll have to look and see if you kind of warranty how that would affect it. But I would say, yeah, in most cases, it's going to be financially feasible, because if you think about all of the cost, like my $800 for my normal maintenance on my car, and I'm hearing people get batteries for a few $1,000s now. So, you know, I spent a third of the cost of the battery. I'm not saying all batteries cost that amount. That's just what I'm hearing they're roughly these days for a lot of models. You know, I paid about a third of what a battery could cost me on just regular maintenance, you know, one time. So it's, yeah, if you think about all the maintenance you pay up front for a gas car and all the gasoline costs, if you add that all up and then look at what a battery cost would cost you in 10 years, whatever it may be, then yeah, it adds up. Now, if you're buying a used EV, that's what I was going to say is keep that in mind, because depending on how old it is, it may need, if it's getting closer, if it's like older than 6 years, you're going to want to start thinking about battery replacement and how much cheaper is that electric vehicle, you know, how much would that battery cost you? So just kind of weigh all of that. Any difference in insurance costs? Not that I have experienced, not that I've seen. It's still just based on the, you know, it's based on the value of the car. So if you have a more expensive electric vehicle, then the insurance would be more. I have a hatchback mom car. So I think my insurance it wasn't that much different than the car I had. I also had a hatchback mom car before. I had a Subaru before. So it was roughly the same. My current car also has way more safety features. So I opted for that package, and that always plays into your insurance costs. But yeah, I haven't seen big changes. All right. So
There is up. If you want to take a look at the average miles.
Okay.
And then
Yeah.
I will stop sharing.
So the biggest average is 21 to 30 miles. So we do have a lot of commuters. We always have a couple of people 30 or more. So there's some long commuters there. We've got 16 to 20 miles is about 21%. And then 14 and 7 and 7 are the shorter commuters. All right. So I have good news for you. Range is getting better and better. So all of you that answered, there is definitely an EV for all of you that will meet your needs. So the Chevy Bolt right now is 259-mile range. The Nissan Leaf Plus is 226-mile range. And the Tesla Model 3 is up to 353-mile range. So these are all kind of mid-range in price, all really good range. And that's kind of what I weighed when I got my 150-mile range EV. I know there was like rumors and talk of this Leaf Plus, but it hadn't come out yet when I got mine. And I was gonna wait, and then I realized, like, gosh, I don't need more range than that. Like, that's fine. And I've done multiple trips to Portland in it. It was totally fine. I just stopped at a fast charger once to get there. So yeah, I mean, you know, just think about how much mileage you really need day to day. And this is funny. This slide is now on 2 slides. This used to just be on 1, but there's so many models out now. So this is just, we're not going to go in this in detail, but you can just kind of see the range here. So the lowest models right now that are out this year was 110 mile range. You can kind of see the estimated cost here go up. And then it keeps going all the way up to the Tesla Model Plaid, which is 520 miles. So that's when I mentioned hydrogen, that 300 to 400 mile range, it's becoming less of a selling point, because look at how many are over 300 miles now with EVs. There's a lot of them out there. And automaker targets, they are just ramping it up. So there's going to be more and more models every single year. They all have targets. They've got, this year, BMW said they want to electrify 25% of the European market. Toyota has an EV target. You got Mazda. I mean, if you look here, you see all the major brands, they all have targets. And a lot of them are working on being all electric by 2030. So they've got some steep goals. What impacts EV ranges? This is where I'll get into the batteries a little bit deeper. So what we actually did a EV charging study recently. We just completed it this year, actually, past summer it finished. It's a 2-year study. So we were really looking at, we wanted to see charging behaviors, but we also wanted to take a look at battery health. And the company we contracted with to help us with that, they do EV charging studies all over the country, all over the US and Canada. So they have a lot of data on EV battery health as well. So some of this is from them and some of it's from us, it's combined. What we found on average, and we did find, in large part because of our mild climate, we suspect we have average better battery life than in other places. We don't have extreme weather. So on average, you lose very, very little capacity in the first couple of years, in the first few years. And then after that, it averages about 2% loss per year. So when you're shopping for a used vehicle, keep that in mind and just kind of look at what is the advertised range for that car, that model, and then deduct 2% per year of how old it is to give you kind of a rough estimate of how much range that car really has left. Some things that impact it are, I just mentioned, extremes in temperature. So our mild climate here in Washington in the Northwest is better for EVs. And fast charging, as I mentioned earlier, does heat up the battery. So extreme heat is always going to be the enemy of batteries. And this goes for your phones, your cell phones, your laptops, any technology that uses batteries. Most of them use lithium-ion batteries these days. So it's very similar chemistry. Charging when the battery is cold also adds stress. So if your car is sitting for a long time and then you plug it in and it warms it up because it's charging, there's energy moving back and forth or moving forward now, it can add a little stress to the battery. The state of charge, if you let the battery get very low or you always keep it at 100%, this can also wear on the battery because, and again, this advice goes for your technology, your cell phones as well. A lithium-ion battery is like a muscle. You have to exercise that muscle. If you only use part of the muscle, then the rest of the muscle will wither. So that's the same thing with the battery. So if you always plug in your car at 60%, just every day when you get home, you plug it in, whether you need to charge or not, then your battery life is actually going to suffer because it's not getting that drain. So interestingly enough, though, most manufacturers actually set upper and lower limits. So when you see 0, it's not really at 0. Or when you see 100, it's not really at 100. So they've kind of done this for you. So I don't let this rule my life too much. I'll plug it in when it's about 20%. I always charge it to 100% though. I just want my full range. So I don't let it stress me out too much, but that's the general advice. And like I said earlier, newer EV battery technology is getting better and expected to last longer. So fire risk. This is one I added recently because I started getting questions about it. So yes, EV fires have happened, but they're very rare. There was recently some information I saw about the national average across all transportation of there's fire for every 19 million miles traveled on average But for an EV, there was only one fire every 205 miles traveled. So it's just a fraction compared to fossil fuel vehicles. So so there's a lot less, there seems to be a lot less risk in there. So things to keep in mind, there's a lot of safety features safety measures in place to prevent it. And like I said, lithium-ion batteries can be found in your cell phones, your laptops. This isn't new. So, any risk you're concerned about with cars, it's the same with your other technology too. So they've been around for a while. There's a lot of, they know kind of how to add those safety features in. And this is silly, but I'll just say it. Gasoline is very flammable as well. So we just want to remember that. It's highly flammable. And from what we're seeing in the data, EVs don't seem to have less of an issue. Environmental impact. So, Jan, do you have a question?
We have a question about asking if you have thoughts on pickup trucks.
Pickup trucks? There are a lot of electric trucks coming soon. I'm so excited because I think we really need this. I'm not a truck person, but a lot of people are. My partner needs a truck. He needs a truck for a lot of reasons. And he is dying to get an electric truck. He's following all the forums. He watches videos on every new electric truck coming out. So I think that is a really important technology, especially here in America. I feel like trucks are such an American vehicle. So we've got to have electric trucks to reach the rest of the market. So I'm excited to see how they come in the market, how they come out. I know the two big ones I'm seeing a lot of right now is, of course, the Tesla Cybertruck and the Rivian, but Ford is also coming out with an F-150, I understand, and there's some other ones coming soon, so we'll see. All right, so another reason why electric vehicles are so perfect here in the Northwest is that we have very clean electricity. In the Northwest in general, we're mostly hydroelectricity. Tacoma Power is over 97% carbon free. We have abundant clean hydroelectricity and a lot of wind power here as well. So that is kind of like the easiest win, is using electricity to fill up your car. So this is just a breakdown more of our fuel mix. So we are 82% hydro, and you can see it was about 6% wind. We don't own any nuclear. This is just off the grid. What comes off the grid, all we own and generate is hydro. So battery end of life. EV batteries can be recycled at the end of their useful life, so they don't get chucked in landfill. They're honestly too valuable for that. They're valuable materials and they're people want, so it is worth it for people to recycle them. There's also still useful life in them for another 8 to 10 years just as storage. So we're starting to see pilots for utility scale battery storage using old EV batteries. So there's a lot of pilots with different manufacturers and utilities partnering up to do this, to kind of see if we can store energy when we have an abundance and maybe don't need to use it, and then rely on those batteries when we need more energy. So they definitely don't go to waste. So where do you go from here? Do your research. I'm happy to answer questions. Also, our website is a fantastic resource. It's mytpu.org/EV. So you can see our calculators on the side here, and lots of different information. So you can learn about charging your EV. You watch this little video, all kinds of good stuff. You can learn about tax credits we talked about. They're in there. And we have links to the Internal Revenue Service and all that good stuff. So you can really dive into it, because I am not a tax advisor. And when you get a copy of this, all of these links are here. So you can definitely use this to kind of jumpstart your research. So I'll leave that actually in case anyone is curiously writing them down, because they can't wait to get the email. But with that, I will just check and see if there's any last minute questions. Let's see. Well,
None in the Q&A, none in the chat. You previously had a poll question about programs that Tacoma Power could offer. Did you want to put that up, or?
Oh yeah, please do.
Okay. Let me launch that, and we can see if anybody has any opinions on that.
Yeah, so please let us know. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, while they're answering that, I did put your email and your contact in the chat.
Oh,
And
perfect.
I'll put some about the EnviroHouse webinars coming up also.
Okay. Yeah, I know not everyone here, since it's National Drive Electric Week, not everyone here is a Tacoma Power customer, but please, we would still want to know your opinion about, you know, what programs could your utility provide, and especially if you're a Tacoma Power customer, to help you choose an EV. We want to know. And like I said, we did just it's fresh off, hot off the presses, launch a home EV charging program. So please check that out. The link to it is on that website that I previously had up there. All right, let's see. Yeah, rebate to help for charger installation. That's what I hear the most. And we listened, we got one now. Okay, lower electric rate at night. Interesting. Utility owned public charging network. We're going to work on that, I swear. We do have, I will say, Tacoma Power does own some EV chargers. We have some at our campus and we have some in Old Town Tacoma. So we've got a few out there right now. And customer outreach campaigns. Yes, I will keep on it.
Okay, I will end the poll here in a couple seconds. It looks like we've probably got most of the people answered that are going to. Share the results.
All right, 89% said in-home charging installation. So glad to hear that, because we did it.
Okay, so I will stop sharing that. And then I have a couple announcements. The webinar has been recorded, and depending on how our media staff's availability is, sometimes I can get it up in like 2 or 3 or 4 days. And sometimes I have to wait a couple weeks because administrative offices kind of get preference. So we will get this up on the EnviroHouse website and on the city's YouTube channel. And I put those links in the chat. I think you can download the chat according to the way I've got this set up, but I don't know if anybody's ever tried that. If you want me to just copy all of those and email you with a list, I actually pulled those from another list, most of them, so I could just send that as an attachment and email it to everybody. So I think that is most of what I have to add. And then we will be starting EV webinars again in the spring. I think this is our last one for this year. But we do have more workshops coming up, and hope you will join us for a few more. So that's all I have to add. If you have nothing more, Sarah, we can end the poll or end the program.
That's all for me. Just please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions.
Okay, thanks everybody.
All right, happy National Drive Electric Week.
Go buy now. Okay, so long.